everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to Mystical Munchies featuring the Marvel Eat the Universe cookbook. Loki's Krop Kakor last week, the appetizer, was a lot of effort for me, for not a lot of payout, to be perfectly honest. I really didn't enjoy that, and it didn't help that the potatoes were falling apart in the boil. Now we're on to the side, the Yancy Street Kugel. This was a change from the Shang-Chi's salt and pepper squid rings that we were going to make last week, because that we were going to make this week, because the ingredients were going to be a pain to get a hold of. So I changed to the Yancy Street Kugel instead. First up, let's tell the story. The ever-loving blue-eyed thing is one of my favorite Marvel characters of all time. It's clobberin' time is in my repertoire of phrases, and I hope that this orange-hued, rocky-looking Jewish treat lives in your recipe repertoire. It's so easy to make, even a four-fingered gargantuan like Ben Grimm could pull it off. I made the carrot juice with a mixer, but you can use water instead, and we're going to. Kugels can be sweet or savory, so adjust the sweetness and accompanying ingredients to suit your celebration. I could definitely see a Human Torch bringing this to Ben and Alicia's wedding reception. Well, we'll find out about all of that. The ingredients for this recipe are waiting for us at the table, so let's move in that direction. You'll probably hear the oven chirping. We've got the oven heating up to 375. For this recipe, we'll need a quarter cup, half a stick of unsalted butter melted, plus more for greasing. I'm actually not going to use the butter for greasing. We'll use cooking spray for that instead. Half a pound of orange pasta. I wasn't able to get a hold of orange pasta, so we're using whole grain pasta instead. A tablespoon of kosher salt. 8 cups of carrot juice or water. I'm using water. 6 eggs. 2 cups each of sour cream and ricotta cheese. That's probably a little bit more than 2 cups, but we'll go with it. Quarter cup of sugar. 2 to 3 threads of saffron. I'm going to be using a combination of turmeric and paprika instead. A teaspoon of ground cinnamon, half teaspoon of cumin, and a half cup of dried apricots, chopped then measured. Let's move into the kitchen on that note to start putting this recipe together. We've got the pot in shot here, but I'm going to immediately pull it away because I want to make sure I get enough water in here. Plus, I'm not completely sure this pot's going to handle the water plus the pasta. So I'm going to measure that out carefully. I've got a much larger pot here in case I end up needing that. And I've always learned, bring the pot to the water, not the other way around. That's especially true when you're doing anything hot. And it's even more true when you're working with oil. So 2. This should end up being fine, but I didn't want to take any chances with it. Pour a little bit more out. Okay. 4. Six. And 8. Okay. So I was being paranoid, but I figured better safe than sorry. All right, so now we want the pasta and the salt. So I've got our 16-ounce box of whole grain pasta. We only need half of this. I'm going to have to kind of eyeball it just a little bit, but not too much, I don't think. Okay, I think we're all good there. Which means that can go in, and the tablespoon of kosher salt once I get this unscrewed. Okay. So now we'll set that over medium heat, and we want to cook that. Let's make sure I get the right burner, because I've done that countless times before. I'm pretty sure we've got the right one here. So I'll grab a wooden spoon for this. That one will do nicely. And then we want to cook that until the pasta is tender. Now we're not going to sit here and watch the pasta cook. And of course it's sizzling a little bit because I got some water on the sides from when I was pouring the cups of water into at a time earlier. So it's just water sizzling, nothing to panic about. What we're going to do after that is we're going to strain the pasta and allow it to cool. At that point we'll go ahead and spray the 9x13 pan with cooking spray. Now you could use the pasta liquid for something else like carrot Bolognese, but we're not going to use that. What we are going to do here though is we're going to keep an eye on the pasta, but rather than sit idle and watch the pasta cook, we're going to move over to the counter. While the pasta is cooking on the stove, we're going to work on making everything else. So we're going to start off with our 6 eggs, preferably without shell. In fact, I'm going to grab a spoon out of the silverware drawer so I can scoop out any errant pieces of shell that might come in. One, two, three, four, five, and 6. And the nice thing about doing it that way is if I decide this recipe is a hit and I'm going to end up making it again, then I've got most of the fixins already in the apartment, so I just need to go pick up the sour cream and the ricotta cheese, and that should be pretty much, well, and the apricots too. So I have most of what I need to make this recipe again. Just giving the pasta a quick stir. Then we'll take the aforementioned sour cream and ricotta cheese. This is probably not the most precise way to measure it out, but actually we might be able to get just the 2 cups out of both of these that we need, but let's see. Let's go. Let's see if the 1 cup will get into the sour cream. Barely, but yes, it will. 1, and actually pouring this out. Pouring this whole thing in probably would have been a bit more precise than I was expecting it to be. So I think that's what we're going to go with here, rather than trying to measure it out. I'm kind of surprised at how good of a guess just grab a big container and pour it out was going to be. So I think that is the strategy we're going to go with here. There we go. And then we should be able to do the same thing with the ricotta cheese here, most likely. We'll need to puncture it first, and I was going to say, I know I've got a pair of scissors in here for that. Because I'm just working on getting this open off camera, but of course, there will be a second container coming of that. And that actually just came out pretty much nice and neat. We'll see how all the second one goes. Didn't even need hardly coaxing from the spatula. So that comes out nice and easily. Then we'll go with the 1/4 cup of sugar. Which that can go toward the dishes. The rest of these can go back up so I don't get confused and go to wash all those measuring cups and spoons later. Then for our highly precise measurement of saffron, as I mentioned earlier, in place of saffron, we'll be using a combination of paprika and turmeric. Since saffron, at least where I'm at, is a little bit hard to get a hold of, and I wasn't able to find precise measurements on how much ground saffron I'd get out of a thread. So we're just gonna dump a bit in. Wow, okay, that's a bit more than a bit, but I know these aren't exactly highly precise measurements. And then the turmeric. Also highly precise measurements. Usually I try to go by the book on these things, but Google wasn't exactly giving me a lot of help in terms of this is how much ground saffron you get in a thread. So I was going to try to adjust to that for the recipe, but nothing doing there. Then we'll get our teaspoon of ground cinnamon, which I've got right here. I think I bought that for the Loki's Croque-Coeur last week, but I ended up not needing it because I had just enough cinnamon in my other container. Then we've got the cumin. Next up, we want the apricots. Okay. We'll dump the bag of that in. And then we'll dump most of the other bag in, but we'll leave a few for garnish later. There we go. Okay. We'll leave those for garnish. And then last up we want the melted butter, which we'll pour that in. I've got a more precise spatula that I'm trying. I'm going to move the camera back just a little bit so I make sure. I didn't realize that spatula that I was looking for was buried in quite that deep. So we'll pull that down. Okay. And now we'll give that a stir. What's the consistency they're wanting here? Looks like they're just saying combine everything. Okay. I'll probably need another spatula, so I will pull... Let's bring this one to the ready. I think I'm encountering a bit more resistance than I was expecting to between the ricotta cheese and the sour cream. Kind of hurting my arm a little bit, but nothing I can do there. Okay, everything looks pretty good there. I think that's mostly combined, so I'll put that to the side, and we'll come back once the pasta's all done. In fact, I'm going to give it a quick stir here. Let's give one piece a taste. I'm using rigatoni, so it shouldn't be too hard to get one piece out to give it a taste. Nope, still needs a few minutes. So we'll step away for a few minutes while the pasta finishes cooking. The pasta finally just came off the oven, so now we're going to pour it into the prepared baking dish. Then once I grab my spatula that I'm going to expect to need to scrape down the sides of the bowl with the cheese mixture, we're going to pour the cheese mixture over the top. We'll give that all a scrape. And I don't know why I put both my wooden spoons over there, but I can grab another one out. I've got a couple more. We'll give this a stir to distribute the sauce a bit. All right. Then we'll garnish this with the last of the apricots. All right. So those are all done, and now we'll put that in the oven for 45 to 55 minutes. We'll come back when this comes out of the oven. Actually, once I move the camera out of the way so I can get the stove open. That's actually a little bit more liquidy than I think I was expecting it to be, but we'll put this in for about 55 minutes. and we'll come back when that comes out of the oven. Here's our first look at the kugel as it's coming out of the oven. I'm a little worried about how liquidy it's going to be on the inside, because it was still looking fairly liquidy as I was putting everything together. But the only way we're going to find out how liquidy it's going to be is for me to carve off a piece of this, a portion I should say of this, and then move over to my desk for the taste test. So that is exactly what we're going to do. A couple things I want to talk about before the taste test. Some observations. First of all, I am not Jewish. So if I'm pronouncing this recipe wrong, A, I'm not going to be surprised, and B, please correct me, but keep it constructive in the comments down below. Second of all, let's take a look at this recipe. I suppose with 6 eggs, I don't know what I was expecting out of it, but this almost looks like a breakfast bake in a way. Like you could very easily modify this to have some meat in it for protein, but it is supposed to be a vegetarian dish without any kind of meat in there. It was also smelling pretty sweet as it was coming out of the oven, and it was in the tail end of baking. So we'll see how much that plays into it. But let's go ahead and give this a taste and see what I think. Smells sweet, and it looks pretty solid, so I guess my paranoia on that was a bit unwarranted, but let's give it a taste. It is fairly sweet. That smell was kind of telling my gut, yeah, this is gonna be pretty sweet, and sure enough, it is pretty sweet. I don't know. Otherwise, it actually feels kind of bland, if I'm being perfectly honest. There's almost no flavor to it, but maybe traditional kugel is supposed to be that way. Again, I don't know. This is my first time ever making it. Actually, let me turn to the friendly neighborhood Google machine, and we'll see what happens here. So it's a casserole made of potatoes or egg noodles, which we were using eggs and noodles for that. So some recipes may be bland. Incorporating ingredients like brown butter or green chili can enhance the flavor. So again, my first time ever making kugel. And like I said, I'm not offended by the recipe. I'm also not like singing its praise like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing I've ever tasted. I'm kind of like, eh. Probably not one I'm ever going to make again, in all honesty. But that's another episode of Mystical Munchies in the books. Next week we will be making the entree as we ask our homegirl Phoenix for help with Phoenix's hot chicken and egg oyakodon. Still plenty of stuff coming up on the channel in terms of the games, as later this afternoon we will be over at Cleveland Stadium in Cleveland, Ohio, to continue my 1985 season replay in season ticket baseball, as the Boston Red Sox will be playing the Cleveland Indians. Roger Clemens will be on the hill for the Red Sox, and Bert Blyleven's going for the Indians. Tomorrow we will continue the winter campaign in Arkham Horror the card game with the second scenario, Dancing Mad, as we're in Havana. Wednesday we'll be playing America Bomber, Evil Queen of the Skies from Compass Games. And I still haven't decided if I'm doing the War Room 10 game challenge yet this year. That video will be coming out this week if I decide to pursue the challenge, but we'll see about that. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care, everyone.